Lai, with a stupidly dumb look on his face, agreed to keep the weapons under control. With that done, the system popped up and showed Jiang that he had completed the task, which was to reunite with Shanshan. It then told him to find and rescue his former companion, Zhang Kai. Jiang was shocked to see that the system was trying to bring him and his comrades back together. As they stood by a huge glass window, he saw a huge arrow pointing him in the direction of where Kai was. It proved to be very helpful because he was really worried about how to find his comrades. While he ran out, he told Shanshan and Lai to remember everything he had told them and not to violate his instructions. Shanshan asked where he was rushing out to, and he said to recruit more people to strengthen their team. Somewhere in the city, at a KTV building, a group of ugly-looking guys were enjoying a karaoke session, and their table was filled with a crazy number of drinks. Two of the guys stepped out to go to the restroom. The fatso had to guide his gray-haired friend, who was probably too drunk to walk straight. He told his friend to eat slowly and not to choke. I hope it's not what I'm thinking. The gray-haired dude then told his fat friend that he would pack something for him to take back. It's definitely looking too suspicious between these two. When they were done with whatever the hell they were doing to each other in the restroom, they started heading back to meet up with the rest. The gray-haired guy mistakenly bumped into a girl who was walking with her man. He apologized, but the stupid man, feeling like it was a good time to show off his foolishness, kicked him and told him to watch where he was going. The gray-haired dude flew through the place, and his friend, who had never spent a single day in the gym, came to check if he was okay. We find out that his name is Zhang Kai, the companion who Jiang was looking for. Zhang Kai's friend yelled at the stupid man for hitting his friend just for a simple mistake. The man felt insulted that a fat piece of garbage was talking back at him, and said that it was rare to meet someone who dared to try such. He grabbed the fatso by the collar and jacked him up. While Zhang Kai tried to apologize for the misunderstanding, he begged the guy not to hit his friend. Some loser who worked there stepped out of the restroom and saw the commotion that was going on. He was barely recovering from an upset stomach, and he caught a cold. He tried to calm down the fight, but the man just felt even more disrespected. He was really trying hard to show off to a girl that he had probably never banged. He told the worker that his boss wouldn't dare try to grab his clothes, but here he is doing the unthinkable. The unfortunate underpaid worker told Kai and his friend to leave while he dealt with the man. The man told the worker to call his boss and questioned how they had the audacity to disrespect him. He even threatened to throw the karaoke bar out of business. Kai and his friends ran like little wimps back to their companions, who asked them if they were chased by a dog. Kai explained that they bumped into a drunk fool when they left the restroom, and the man wanted to mess them up. Luckily, they got saved by the waiter. If not, they would have gotten really bruised up. One of the guys got angry that the fatso didn't fight back, saying that their mechanical engineering class had never backed down from a fight. It was obvious that he was the idiotic musclehead of the group, and he was always ready for a fight. He said he'd make a call to gather more of their brothers to take care of the thug. The brother with a white jacket looked at him like the dude had completely gone bonkers. Zhang Kai told him to stop showing off because they were graduating in less than a year, and the last thing they needed was more trouble on their hands. He told them to enjoy the music and keep dancing. Sadly for them, the thug walked into the place with more of his retarded lackeys and the waiter, who looked like he was barely conscious. Zhang Kai and his crew were shocked to see the pitiful state of the waiter. The idiotic thug pointed towards them and told his goons to teach them a lesson. Zhang Kai and his friends got rounded up, and they were made to kneel with their hands behind their heads. The waiter, on the other hand, was seriously shaking from the pain he was in. The stupid musclehead demanded to make a call, but instead got a bottle smashed on his head for speaking when he wasn't allowed to. He started bleeding from his head, and Zhang Kai screamed his name, Chen Chong. All this was just because a foolish thug wanted to show off to an ugly girl who looked like a troll. Meanwhile, Jiang arrived at the karaoke bar, but was completely clueless as to what was going on inside. The butlers at the door ushered him into the venue as he said that the world was ending and his friend still had the mind to sing. If you guys want the next part, then complete the aim of 100 likes and 100 subscribers. While the music was going on and the lights of the club were still spinning, Chong was bleeding from his head like a waterfall after one of the thugs smashed his head with a glass bottle. The thug still held the broken bottle as if he were prepared for another round, while Jiang Kai called out to his bleeding friend. The foolish guy who was doing all these theatrics for his ugly girlfriend asked her if she was feeling better after seeing him display the traits of a deranged idiot. He put his arms around the girl and tried to get a good feel of her arms, but she wasn't impressed by his lame heroics. The girl was more pressed about how her nail polish looked as she asked him what was there to feel better about. She told him that he wasn't even dealing with the actual person who bumped into her. The thug, with the brain of a buffoon, turned his attention to Jiang Kai. He held the broken bottle to Jiang's face and slowly approached him. The girl still showed no signs that she was the least bit impressed with all this tomfoolery. Meanwhile, Chong was slowly getting up and trying to recover from his bleeding head. Out of anger and frustration, he quickly reached for an ashtray and wanted to use it to make the thug pay for nearly sending him to his maker. He tried to smash it on the guy's head, but the other goons held him back. One of the brain-dead thugs called him a little punk and mocked him for being foolish enough to try and fight back, given his unfortunate circumstances. Chong struggled to break free, but it was no use because he was too much of a weakling to them. The thug, who was nothing but a simp, felt irritated and angry that Chong was bold enough to try and fight back. He didn't expect him to have so much guts, and he gritted his teeth fiercely in anger. As the other goons held Chong down, their leader smashed another bottle on Chong's head. Yeah, he definitely can't be coming out of this one. The wine splashed everywhere, and broken bottle pieces could be seen flying through the air. Chong was knocked out cold, and he slumped to the floor like a sinking rock. Jiang Kai and the rest of his friends were completely shocked at the horrid event they just witnessed. You could see the anger on one of the friends' faces, while the other two tried to call out to their friend. At this point, there wasn't any need for them to hold back anymore. They had tried their best to be calm and respectful, but it ended up quite bad for them. Jiang Kai and the fatso rushed towards the leader of the thugs to send him 6 feet under, while the last guy stood at the back, holding a baseball bat. On the other hand, one of the waiters was hiding in the corner and shaking like a pathetic coward. In the background, you could hear the thugs calling Jiang Kai a punk, and they were furious that he just wouldn't back down. Things got out of hand, and everyone was ready to go all out. Lao Si was told to grab one person and make sure that they never see the light of day again. While everyone was brawling and being a nuisance to the club, the waiter was in a lot of pain, and he groaned as a lot of cold sweat ran down his body. His body was shaking a lot, and you could see some purple veins pop out from his back and his forehead. It was like he was slowly having a bad mutation of the Hulk. At the same time, Jiang Kai was dishing out knuckle sandwiches to all the idiots who tried to mess with him and his friends. He swung hard at one of the goons, but the guy was quick enough to dodge, while another person was coming at him from behind. The waiter, who was shaking like a junkie earlier, now looked completely possessed, with blood dripping from his eyes. His eyes had gone completely white, he was sweating profusely, and he was drooling like a hungry beast. As he looked at the bunch of fools who were fighting, all that ran through his mind was how good they would taste once he got a bite. He roared out like a filthy beast and rushed to join the fray. Whatever caused him to mutate made him run at an inhuman speed, but it was probably at the cost of whatever was left of his brain. The waiter, who was now a mindless zombie, quickly grabbed one of the thugs and forcefully held onto him. The thug tried to break free, but the zombie displayed a terrifying level of inhuman strength. The filthy thing quickly took a bite of the thug, who was now in agonizing pain. The dumb girl, who was the cause of all this mayhem, screamed in shock as she saw the zombie take a large bite out of the guy. The thug called the waiter a dog and tried to get him to let go, but it was hopeless for him. He then called out to his guys so that they could help him. A man who was watching the whole thing couldn't believe his eyes. It was as if he had been thrown into those horror movies, and he was the side character who was completely useless. All he could do was put his hands behind his head. He opened his mouth wide and screamed, hoping for it to all be a dream. Meanwhile, the thugs were trying to hold down the zombie, but his crazy strength left them shocked. They still had yet to clock that they weren't dealing with an average human being. The zombie let go of the person he was clinging to before and went ahead to bite the other unfortunate soul. The guy called him a good-for-nothing and was surprised to see that he was really acting like a deranged dog. As the thug struggled to break free, the zombie knocked him down to the ground, while his teeth were still firmly planted into his arms. The thug was baffled at how insane the zombie's strength was because his arm was about to be completely ripped off. As the struggle continued, a hand suddenly popped out and grabbed the neck of the zombie from behind. As the person lifted the zombie into the air, we saw that it was Jiang performing such crazy feats with his physical enhancements. Everyone else in the room was surprised that he could lift up a fellow human with such ease, and even with one hand. Jiang slowly squeezed the zombie's neck, and his face didn't look too happy about what was going on. With blazing anger, he smashed the zombie onto the glass wall and held his face to it so that the shards could cut him up slowly. Then he turned to the rest of the idiots who had been causing a ruckus and told them to stop. Everyone else there was still freaked out by Jiang's crazy strength. The man who was a snack for the zombie looked beyond frightened as he looked up at Jiang. He said that the deranged zombie was as strong as a bully, but he didn't understand how Jiang was able to pin him to the wall with one hand. It was as if he was also angry at himself for being a pitiful weakling. The stupid thug leader screamed out and asked Jiang who he was. Rather than thank the protagonist for saving their miserable lives, this brickhead thought it was wise to yell and act like he had some use. The other pathetic goon beside him was in a lot of pain because the zombie had taken a chunk of his shoulder for dinner, and it looked like the wound had become infected. Jiang ignored the idiot's question and turned to Zhang Kai. He wanted to make sure that his friend had been bitten by the monster and also make sure that he was alright. Zhang Kai told Jiang that he was fine, but with a perplexed look on his face, he asked Jiang why he was worried about him being bitten. Jiang ignored that foolish question as well and, with a mean look, told his friend to come with him. There wasn't any time to waste, and he needed to assemble his past comrades as fast as possible. While Zhang Kai stood up to go, that idiotic simp pulled him back and said that they weren't done. A literal zombie just wreaked havoc in their midst, and his men were severely wounded, but he was more bothered about how much he had to impress some ugly girl, who he had probably never laid before. Anyway, as he was being stupid, one of his goons, who got bit on his shoulder, suddenly started coughing and complaining about his spinning head. His boss asked him what was wrong, and he thought it was just a cold, but he was about to find out how his foolishness would be the end of him. Jiang had a look on his face that said he already figured out what was happening to the thug. He wasn't fazed at all, but just kept his composure and waited for the worst to happen. The purple veins began to break out of the thug's neck and head. He gritted his teeth in pain and held on to his wound, but it was already too late for him. He tried to explain that he just had a runny nose in the afternoon, but got interrupted by Jiang. The protagonist asked him if his shoulder was bitten by the zombie while still holding onto the monster's neck. The zombie was still fighting to break free, but Jiang had that dog in him, so he wasn't breaking free anytime soon. The thug was confused and wondered how the zombie's bite had anything to do with the way he was feeling. While still fighting the pain, he told Jiang that he was bitten and asked what that had to do with anything. You could see as the purple filthy mutation was slowly creeping up from his back to his face. The fact that no one else in the room could figure out what was going on showed why they must have died like fools in Jiang's past life. Jiang started to analyze the whole situation and thought to himself that the thug was probably already infected before he got bitten. Now that he was bitten close to his head, he was likely going to mutate soon, since the signs had begun to show themselves. Jiang dragged the already deranged zombie and was heading out, while the H-Tug leader asked him what he was doing. The others were staring at him, and they hoped that he would give a reasonable explanation for all his strange questions and actions. Jiang got to the door and tossed out the mutated filth like he was a pile of trash. Then, he quickly shut the door. The zombie started to bang and claw at the door, trying to force himself back inside. Jiang, on the other hand, was glad that zombies were too dumb to figure out how to open doors yet. Because of this, they were all safe in the meantime. As he dusted off his palms, he turned to the others and saw that they were all looking at him weirdly. It was obvious that they were waiting for him to start explaining himself, but Jiang was taking his sweet time. I mean, it's his show, so you can't really blame the guy. His mood shifted, and you could see the killing intent spilling from his eyes. At this point, the demons of hell were scared of what this idiot was about to do. He cracked his knuckles and asked Zhang Kai which one of the stupid thugs he needed to take out first. However, Zhang Kai had no idea who this crazy kid was, and he asked him if they knew each other. The leader of those thugs was looking completely pissed off because he was being threatened. He rushed towards Jiang, telling him that he was getting cocky, and he attempted to land a punch on the pretty boy's face. That punch looked like it was taking years just to hit, and Jiang wasn't the least bit bothered by the idiotic simp. Before the guy's hand could halfway through, Jiang swiftly grabbed his head and shut him up before he spewed any more rubbish from his mouth. With his Hulk-like strength, he smashed the man to the ground, knocking him out in the process. The other foolish goon who was bitten on his shoulder rushed towards Jiang in an attempt to attack him. He cursed out Jiang and said that he was definitely asking for it. Sadly, he was no match for Jiang's Bruce Lee moves. Jiang gave him a hefty punch to the nose. Now the idiot's nose wasn't only runny but bleeding as well. Jiang barely used his true power, but he was able to send the guy falling straight to the ground. As the guy got knocked to the ground, Jiang maintained his fighting stance like he was a character in a fighting game. Meanwhile, the goon was knocked out cold and was foaming at his mouth. His partner rushed to his side and asked why he was acting so pathetic after just one punch. His body began to shake and wiggle, which showed that the mutation had begun, but his partner had no idea what was about to go down. On the other hand, Jiang was feeling like the next best thing since sliced bread, as he asked if there was anyone else who wasn't convinced and wanted to get a taste of his fists. He said that they were welcome to try. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.